Morning everyone, welcome to a wet, windy, dreary midweek morning on my way to work. Depressing actually. But today I want to talk about Donald Trump, President of the United States, and Brexit, and actually say, what's all the fuss about? Why are people so outraged and up in arms? Is this really a surprise to anyone? So we're in the week where President Bush has signed his executive order restricting entry to people from certain countries and such like as part of his so-called Make America Great program. And it's fair to say that there has been outrage to stuff that he's been doing. Now, I want to point out right at the very beginning here that actually I'm not a fan of Trump. I wouldn't have voted for him if I was a US citizen. I think he's got some very, very strange views, and more importantly than that, I think he's dangerous. But he was democratically elected. Before anyone says, oh, but you know, Hillary got more of the popular vote, well, maybe, whatever, but according to the system that is used to elect the President of the United States, he won in a democratic election, fair and square. So the outrage, particularly here in the UK, has been around that the British government should come out and should condemn what Trump has done. He's also been given an official invite to come on a state visit to the UK. People are saying that should be withdrawn. But I keep asking myself this question: what is all the fuss about? Now, I don't think his immigration policy is a good idea. I don't think it's going to achieve the aims that he wants it to achieve. But at the end of the day, I'm not the President of the United States. And I say what is all the fuss about because it's not as if there was this unbelievable world statesman standing for election saying all these fantastic things, and then as soon as he's got into office, it's kind of like, wow, this is a surprise. He's doing all sorts of things that we never imagined. Love him or loathe him, he has been upfront about what he wants to do and how he's going to do it. During his election campaign, he was pillared for it, but he said he was going to ban people from countries and Muslims from entering the United States. So why all the fuss and outrage now when he's just doing exactly what he said he's going to do? None of this is a surprise. Now, I get that people don't like what's going on and what's happening. But as I said, that's democracy. He won an election fair and square. He now has the right, whether you like it or not, to implement the policies that he stood for election for. And there's a very similar argument for Brexit here in the UK. Again, cards on the table time. I voted to remain. I didn't want to leave the EU. My personal view is, whilst the EU is not perfect, I think there's more to be had out of the EU than being outside. I think it will be bad for the country. I don't know. Who knows? Well, we're going to find out, aren't we? We had a referendum. We asked the British people. Yeah, all these people that are now moaning about, oh, well, you know, we should be staying in the EU. People didn't know what they were talking about. Oh, it was a dreadful campaign. People were misinformed. It was fake news. All this nonsense. Whatever. Are you genuinely saying to me that people can't make a choice and make a decision? Now, people's decisions aren't always logical. People's decisions aren't always based on fact. In fact, there's a very useful saying: perception is more powerful than reality. And it's true in virtually every single case. The British people have spoken. Yeah, and it's irrelevant whether or not they've made an informed choice. They've made a choice. The UK government said, we're going to give people a choice, a chance to vote whether they want to leave or stay. How people have come to that decision is their own business. But now that they have reached that decision, want to go, well, just get on with it. Just bloody do it. Politicians going now, oh, but you know, I'm not sure the British people quite understood what they were voting for. I mean, How much of a tosser can you be to say something like that? Get on, respect the views of the British people, even though I don't like it, and I think it is the wrong choice. Get on, and we're out of Europe now. It's just got to be done. And that attitude by politicians, that kind of sneering arrogance of, I know better. My view is the most important thing. I was hearing on a radio chat show, I'm talking about MPs, and the argument being that you've got to remember that MPs are representatives, not delegates, i.e. you elect them to make a decision on your behalf. Well, yes, of course you do. And that's why we have a parliament and laws going through parliament, and most stuff happens that way. But when an issue is so serious that you decide to have a referendum, what you're saying is, as your representatives in parliament, we think this issue is so big that we want you to give us your views rather than leave it to us to make the decisions on your behalf. And that attitude is part of the problem, I think, of why the UK voted to leave the European Union, and also why Donald Trump got elected as President of the United States. And for me, that problem is epitomised by what I would call the middle class liberal elite in this country. It's the sort of people that read The Guardian, who have children called Tarquin and Lottie, who the champagne supping, ciabatta chewing middle classes of Putney, south of the river, and Richmond, and those sorts of areas, who lecture everyone on the housing crisis and how difficult it is, and people can't get on the house when they're sitting in their £1 million London pads. It's those that have a social conscience because they can afford a social conscience, because they're earning a gazillion times more than the national average, and so talk about how we must increase taxation to look after those that aren't so fortunate as ourselves. It's those hypocritical do-gooders that think that, for example, criminals are people that only are committing crime because they've had a deprived life, and if only we could give them a chance, we must look after them, and we shouldn't send people to prison until, of course, they're a victim of crime, and then they're demanding for their heads and hands to be chopped off. It's that sort of attitude, and that is really reflected in our political class as well. And so you ask why Brexit happened, why Donald Trump got elected, and the reason being is because it's that part of society that has single-handedly refused to address the issues that, whether they're the real issues or whether they're just the perception issues, i.e. the issues that people feel are the most important to them and causing problems, even if they don't actually cause problems. I mean, immigration is the classic one. Immigration in the EU. I mean, there's loads of evidence to suggest that the EU open borders policy has got nothing really to do much with immigration, because when you talk about people and immigration, you tend to talk about from the subcontinent, and we had great immigration in this country in the 60s and 70s from India and the Caribbean. That's traditionally, well, certainly that's traditionally what people in my generation tend to think of as immigration. I don't deny the fact that the Eastern European influx into the UK, looking for work and such like, that is an issue. But all these people are saying, oh, no, this is not an issue, we can't talk about this. Actually, immigration is all about cultural diversity and makes our country richer and all the better for it, and how dreadful it will be. Well, that may well be the case. I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that view. But the problem is, when you're saying that and someone doesn't believe it, when someone's view is that immigration is the most important thing to them, it's this being out of touch, the political class, the elite, liberal middle class, being out of touch with people and ignoring the views or poo-pooing what they think is important. And by doing that, are you surprised by what happens? Because despite him saying some loathsome things, Trump got elected because he was saying a lot of the things that a large proportion of the United States population agreed with. Brexit happened because the vast majority, well, not the vast majority, but the majority of the British people felt that actually coming out of the EU was going to address some of the issues that they wanted addressed, that the political and elite liberal middle classes had ignored for too long. So you look at some opinion poll stuff, and actually I was doing this kind of related to some stuff I was doing at work the other day, and I had a look through. Ipsos Mori do a tracker poll that looks at the biggest national issues facing the country at the moment here in Britain. And in the lead up to Brexit and before Brexit, immigration was the #1 issue, up at like 37%, something like that. And so, is it any surprise that then come the Brexit vote, people express their views on immigration on it? Yeah, YouGov done some interesting polling, again tracker stuff, where asking people about, do you think made the right decision to leave the EU or stay into the EU? And it's pretty much still neck and neck, 44, 43, 45, 43, something like that, of in favour of leaving the European Union. So very neck and neck. But then when you ask them questions like, do you think it's going to be good for Britain's economy? Do you think it's going to be good for British jobs? Do you think it's going to be good for the NHS? Leaving, all that sort of thing. Not by massive amounts, but there is a clear trend where people actually think on most stuff that you ask them that Britain is going to be in a worse place being out of the EU than it is being in the EU. But then you come to the question of, do you think there will be more, less, or about the same immigration? And there is a massive clear lead in that for people who think that immigration will be much less by not being part of the EU. And so, to my mind, there you have it. Brexit, in some ways, wasn't really a vote about being in or out of the EU. It was an expression of people's views on immigration. And yeah, polling backs that up. This brings me to another interesting point, and that is, beware the vocal minority. Yeah, they are not necessarily representative of the wider views. So at the moment you've got The Guardian, champagne swilling middle classes saying how awful it is with Trump, how awful it is that we're going to Brexit, and they're making a huge big noise on it. Yeah, there's a petition that's signed by about 1 million people now to say that we shouldn't allow Trump to come on a state visit. Yeah, that always happens whenever there's an issue. You get people get together. Oh, let's sign a petition. Let's have a debate in Parliament. But they're the ones that, and yeah, it's the media lovies that are writing all these articles in the papers or online or doing their news reports that are, you know, making a huge big issue about it. There's a load of noise going on, but it's coming from a very vocal minority. So what about what I refer to as the silent majority? The average man or woman on the street. They're the ones, they're not saying anything, they're not making a big fuss, because actually they agree with it. For the first time in ages, I think in America, there's a big group of people that think that there is a person now who is their president who actually understands some of their views, that is going to tackle some of those views, who's not afraid to say controversial things, stuff that doesn't align with political correctness and such like. That's again why I think the British public voted to leave the European Union. They were sick and tired of being told that, oh, actually, no, this isn't really an issue. Oh, and you can't say that because that's not correct, and you know, you'd be wrong to say that. We have ignored for way too long those issues that the vast majority of people think is important, but politicians have been too afraid to actually face head on. So I don't know if that's made any sense whatsoever. Again, always interested in your thoughts, but like I did in a previous video on motorcycle justice, please, 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 can we have sensible, reasonable comments So I hope that was fun, and I shall catch up with you very soon. Take care, everyone.